Well, welcome everybody. We are going to visualize that we are out in the sun at Timrod Park doing this. So what I'm going to demo for you all today is a really wonderful recipe that is basically Charlie and Alice Caldwell's recipe, but then a lot of us, Stephanie and Kitty Finkley and myself, we kind of all tweaked it here and there. We have 3 types of greens here today that we're going to cook with. These are microgreens, and oh my gosh, if you guys haven't tried these yet, these are really, really good. You need to sample some. Okay, what we have here are broccoli, I think, and sunflower. And Ovis Hill's carrying several different types. They also have arugula, mustard, radish. And with these microgreens, they're not sprouts. If any of you eat sprouts, they actually kind of look like sprouts. But it's actually, they're grown in dirt, and then they're just harvested when they're tiny little greens. They have all the flavor of the green, but they are so tender. So I've been throwing these things in salads and wraps, and they're super versatile. But because they're so tender, they don't need to cook very long. So that's why we've separated the greens into 3 different bowls, because we have very tender greens that only need to cook a very short amount of time. Then we have spinach, which is kind of a medium textured green, like arugula would be like that as well, that you're going to need to cook a little bit longer. And then we have robust greens here that are pretty hardy, collard greens. Also, you can use any kind of greens for this, whatever is in season. So like mustard greens, we use broccoli greens a lot at my house from the garden, turnip greens, so whatever you have available. Of course, you always make sure that you wash your produce before you cook with it, right? First, make sure your hands are clean before you do any food preparation. 1 in 6 people every year in our country get sick with foodborne illness, and you don't want to be one of those folks. So. When you're washing your greens, you would just use running water. That's usually the best way to wash your produce, is use running water. And especially you want to take the stem off, like your spinach, and you might even want to soak it in water first, and that lets, because something like kale or spinach can get a lot of sand in it, and it's closer to the ground too. And that way you want to do that 2 or 3 times to really get all that sand out. First thing I'm going to do is go ahead and get this skillet heated up to a medium-high temperature. And what I've already done is measured out a tablespoon of olive oil. Okay, so I'm going to put the olive oil in the skillet. And I'll tell you the way that my mom taught me how to know when your oil is ready to put the food in there is you just put a little sprinkle of water in there, and when the water sizzles, I see lots of head shaking, you know it's ready. I don't have any of that right here, but I could just put a teeny bit of my broth in here, and that'll help me know. So while this is heating up, what we're going to do first is we're going to saute our onions and garlic. And what we have as far as our garlic goes, we have a traditional onion here, but we have some of Ovis Hill garlic that many of you may not have cooked with before. Really wonderful. Smells good. Now our oil is ready to cook, so I'm going to go ahead and put the onions and the garlic in here and saute those. And we're going to saute them for about 5 or 7 minutes. Things are going to start smelling pretty good around here. Once our onions and garlic are sauteed here, I'm going to take them out, and then I'm going to start with the most tender greens and start sauteing them. And we only needed a little bit of olive oil in here, and of course olive oil is a healthy oil to use in your cooking. It actually helps your good cholesterol come up and your bad cholesterol go down. The other thing that we're going to be using today are black beans. Okay, now we just did the easy thing, and we just used a can of black beans. And Stephanie's already rinsed those off for us, because you can get up to 75% of the sodium out of your canned vegetables if you rinse them with water ahead of time. You can use any kind of peas or beans also, so you can use whatever you've got. Black-eyed peas, pinto beans, kidney beans, cowpeas. So I'm going to go ahead and take the onions and the garlic out, and we're going to add the most delicate greens in there. We're going to use a little bit of broth. You can use chicken broth, like low sodium chicken broth for this, or veggie broth. Now the recipe calls for a 1/4 cup. I'm going to start with that, but this skillet uses more liquid than probably your stovetop does. So we may have to add a little bit more than that. And I think actually you said this recipe says to that you might need more. You need to just watch it. So we're going to give these just a real quick stir fry. We don't want to cook them to death. They don't take but a minute or two. So now what I did was I took out those very tender greens and I put in the spinach. And so we're going to let that, this is going to cook a little bit longer. The other ingredient that we're using in this recipe along with the greens and the beans is Asiago cheese. So of course you can use any kind of cheese that you want to, and this is a wonderful cheese. I love Asiago. It's an Italian cheese made from cow's milk, because you know some cheeses are made from sheep's milk and some goat's milk, and it's cow's milk. I'm getting the spinach out of here, and then we're going to cook the greens, the collard. These are going to take longer to cook, and I'm going to throw the beans in here too to warm up and cook a little bit. And then what I'm going to do is cover it up and just leave it alone for a few minutes and turn this temperature down. So this is a pretty easy recipe, isn't it, y'all?
Yeah.
Just going to cover that up. Okay, these are coming along pretty nicely here. Some more broth in there. If you were going to put some herbs and spices in there, this is the time. I'll go ahead and put some pepper in here, but this is the time when you probably want to put it in, and that way it really kind of can get into your food too. Enhances the flavor, gives it a little bit of time to cook. This is going to take probably about, we're going to give it a few more minutes here. Now I don't like to cook my veggies to death. So I like a little crunch to them, because when you cook them too long, you do lose some nutrition. For instance, vitamin C gets destroyed by heat. Okay, so that would be one thing that you lose. So I think that these are cooked well enough. And now I'm going to go ahead and turn it down a little bit more and start adding everything in. So we're going to add our onions back. I'm flattening it out here because, again, since I'm doing this in one cooking skillet, sprinkle some cheese on top here. And I'm going to put the spinach on. And we're going to add those greens. Microgreens. And then I've turned my heat down because now all I'm doing is trying to warm everything up and melt that cheese. So I'm just turning the heat down and covered that up. I think this is ready. The cheese looks melted, and I believe we're good to go.